life, almost everyone has experienced an interview, whether here at Rutgers for an external job or even with coaches for us athletes. Your palms are sweaty, you're hot and flustered, and you're trying not to draw too much negative attention to yourself. All of these emotions are part of your body language, which is interpreted and read by others. First, tonight I will discuss the topic of body language and its usefulness to students like us. First, I will discuss common misconceptions in interpreting body language. Second, I will discuss how certain body languages translate to those around us. Third, I will explain the effects of controlling your body language on a person's hormonal level and physique. And lastly, I'll talk about how to use body language to help yourself in an interview. The first thing that is important about body language is how others interpret your body language. It's clear from a survey that many people fall victim to some of the common misconceptions associated with body language. On the survey, people replied that holding one's body upright and acting attentively draws attention to the person in question. However, according to nursing, a resource for personal growth and development, this position actually detracts attention from the person in question. In order to more effectively draw attention to yourself, you must instead take up more space and lean forward instead of creating a symmetrical image that an eye can easily pass over. Another common misconception is when a person looks right while speaking and fidgets, they are not telling the truth. In the article Strong Language found in the 2013 issue of New Scientist, Dr. Caroline Williams explains that in studies performed, people who were telling the truth actually performed more of these actions than the people who were lying. She also explains that in body language, in this case, it is not a clear indicator as to who is lying just by looking at one aspect. Instead, it is better to listen to the person and the delivery of their speech. A person who is lying usually uses abnormal high pitch with a less detailed account of what has happened, with multiple accounts of repetition. A single body language isn't reliable as several signs. A cluster of body language provides a much more reliable source, as I will discuss in a bit. Another common misconception, which might be of more interest to the people in this classroom, is the topic of flirting. Although there are signs of flirtation, such as girls playing with their hair and eye contact and nodding, these are only valid if they continue past the past 4 minutes of the conversation. According to Dr. Williams in the same article, Strong Language in the New Scientist, every person exhibits these signs within the first minute of speaking to someone, and they are not to be confused with actual flirtation. Now that I have covered some of the misconceptions that people have concerning body language, I will cover what certain body language movements can but not always mean. My second point covers individual parts of our bodies and how others read us. Eyes tend to look right when the brain is imagining or creating, and left when the brain is recalling and remembering. This relates to the left and right side of our brain, in which the brain handling the creativity and feelings is on the right, and the facts and memory on the left. Under certain circumstances, creating can mean fabrication or lying, especially but not always when the person is supposed to be recalling facts. Looking right when stating facts does not necessarily mean lying. It can, for example, mean that the person does not know the answer, is talking, hypothetically speaking, speculating, or guessing. The mouth is associated with many other body signals. Unlike the nose and ears, which are brought into play by body language actions with the hands and fingers, the mouth acts independently. Smiling is a big part of facial body language. As a general rule, real smiles are produced symmetrically and create creases around the eyes and the mouth. However, fake smiles tend to be a mouth-only gesture. The head is very significant in body language. The head tends to lead and determine general body direction, but it is also vital and vulnerable, being it where our brain is. So the head can be used in a lot of directional, such as the shaking of the head for likes and dislikes, and also in defense for self-protection. Arms act as defensive barriers when across the body, and conversely indicate feelings of openness and security when they are in an open position, especially if the palms are faced outward. Arms are quite reliable indicators of mood and feeling, especially when interpreted with other body language. For example, crossed arms means possibly defensive. If you combine this with crossed legs, it means that you're probably defensive. But if you combine this with frowning and clenched fist, it means that you are most definitely defensive and probably hostile too. When body language and speech characteristics are mirrored or synchronized between people, this tends to assist the process of creating or keeping rapport, which is a mutual feeling of empathy, understanding, and trust. Mirrored or synchronized body language between two people encourages feeling of trust and rapport because it generates unconscious of affirmation. Salespeople and other professional communicators are widely taught to mirror the facts, mirror all sorts of body language and subtle signals between the people they're talking to as a means of creating trust and rapport with the other person and to also influence their attitude. Now that we know about a person's body language, I will discuss the effects it has on the individual themselves. My third point we'll cover is the effect of body language on a person's hormonal level and physique. Body language can be helped to improve the way a person handles a stressful or demanding situation. People in situations together often complement each other's body language. So if one person takes on a dominant posture, the other tends to be inferior. As Dr. Amy Cuddy explains in her TED Talk Body Language, the body shapes who you are. Your body can trick your brain into telling yourself it is dominant or a subordinate person. She describes in an experiment in which participants held a high or low power position for 2 minutes before performing an interview. The levels of 2 hormones were tested before and after the participants held this position. High power positions saw an increase in the levels of testosterone, which is a power hormone, and a decrease in the level of cortisone, while low power positions did the opposite. This change in hormone level explains how dominant people are able to feel more empowered and control of their situation. Thus, by holding these positions for a matter of 2 minutes, a person can trick their body into being dominant and empowered. Now that we know a little bit about how body language can help change our body, I want to describe some tips for an interview. The last point I will touch on includes tips for using body language to help prepare for an interview. The most important advice is to use this high power pose to your advantage. For example, these are some examples of high power poses compared to low power poses. So you would want to use the high power pose to your advantage.
Can you describe for us what those are?
Sure. These high power poses, if you held like this or in a stance of dominance, it helps increase your testosterone level, which gives you, it physically changes the chemicals in your brain to make you feel more empowered. If you sit like this and create yourself more like down into yourself, it creates a negative effect on your brain and your body actually becomes like this. So therefore you have an increased level of cortisol, which is a stress hormone, and therefore you become more stressed before your interview. The 2 levels of hormone, the change in hormones will affect the perspective you have on the task in front of you. According to Dr. Cuddy's TED Talk, the decreased cortisol helps you handle the stressful environment and makes you less reactive when placed under pressure. In an article in Executive Female called The Body Language of Power, Dr. Phyllis Mendel suggests reducing extraneous hand gestures that detract from the overall meaning of the speech. According to the professional manual in nursing I previously mentioned, women especially find that hand motions and gestures take away from the message that they're trying to convey. In a study performed, women were found to use twice the amount of hand gestures as men. Positioning yourself in an asymmetrical manner will help reduce the amount of negative body language that you portray. The same article in nursing suggests that positioning yourself in this way, leaning forward, crossing the leg at your knee and not the ankle, gesturing with only one arm, portrays a persona that is relaxed, self-assured, and credible. In conclusion, I have shared with you today information explaining the body language. I talked to you about the common misconceptions and included individual parts of the body that play key factors in how others interpret us. I discussed several tips for using body language for an interview, and lastly, I touched on how a person's hormone levels and physique changes who they are. Body language can really be used to manipulate how others think and portray us. As stated by Dr. Cuddy, don't fake it until you make it, fake it until you become it.